Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation. And viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, the nation's hard look at native boarding schools and the long road ahead.
This was the practice of genocide, and that it's time for the country to reckon with that. There are ways in which New Mexico can grapple this issue.
And what's ahead for the state as masks make a return in schools and beyond. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. Native communities have watched closely Interior Secretary Deb Haaland's announcement that the U.S. will examine its ugly past with the forced education of Native children in boarding schools. We'll take a deep dive with a local panel and look at a recent NewsHour interview with Secretary Haaland. We'll also examine what's behind encouraging news from UNM's medical school, where more family practice residents are staying in New Mexico. The Line Opinion panel takes up the proposal for a new soccer stadium too. We begin with the resurgence of COVID-19 among the unvaccinated and the promise of more masks. Here's the line. Feelings of optimism we might have had this summer about a return to something approaching pre-pandemic normalcy have taken a hit in recent weeks. First, the new school year won't be entirely free of masks or precautions. Second, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have reissued recommendations for masks, even among vaccinated people. That as the ultra-contagious Delta variant makes a resurgence. To parse out what it means and what might be ahead is our Line Opinion panel. Former State Senator Dede Feldman joins us this week as one of our Line regulars, as does former House Minority Whip Daniel Foley, glad to have him back, and founder of Ciarza Social Digital, Crystal Ciarza, is our guest this week. Now, Dede, the CDC's recommendation, which the state of New Mexico is following, is for places with rising transmission and infections. That's some, but not all of New Mexico, as we know. Aren't these the same places that have been resistant to masks that we're seeing this rise?
Yes, they are. Eddy County in particular has been resistant to masks. But I listened to Dr. Scrace yesterday in his news conference, and he said that New Mexico would be following the CDC guidelines, which require masks or which suggests masks in areas of high transmission, especially and due to the Delta variation. And in New Mexico, he said he would recommend that, although you can see those certain counties, he recommended everyone be wearing a mask, vaccinated or unvaccinated, because the transmission of the Delta variety is so severe, and our cases are spiking back to even a level that existed back in March. That he recommends that everybody, of course, get vaccinated, and this is an epidemic of the unvaccinated. That's who's getting sick. But even people who have had vaccinations can transmit this new variant.
That's right.
So his was a blanket recommendation for the whole state, not just specific counties.
Good points there. Daniel, I got to ask, though, I got to hone in places like Carlsbad, Hobbs, Roswell. I mean, you're down there, you know these folks. Is this mask recommendation going to get anywhere, or what's the way to get it?
So the way to get it is, first of all, I'm vaccinated.
Okay.
I got vaccinated. I had COVID and I got vaccinated. Not got vaccinated and had COVID. I think this whole thing from the get-go has been a public relations disaster across the country from the get-go. I mean, we're just, you're talking to people. You got to look at the people when you talk about Chaves County, Eddy County, Lee County. These are people who are already, Otero County, already have a sense of distrust of the government in the first place. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they have it. And so when you start giving them anything to feed the seeds of doubt, you're going to get what you're getting now. And when you're having the whole, look, nobody's going to get it if you get vaccinated, to now you're going to get it, to maybe you're going to get it, to, whether you've got, just even yesterday you had the the CDC director saying that, that, oh, there's a 1 in 10 chance if you have the vaccine that you will get the disease. Well, that's not what the numbers say. The numbers say it's 1 out of 1,000. So, I mean, there's just all this stuff that so many people, and I think, and again, I'm not blaming any one party. I think there's equal blame across the board. They've, to quote Rahm Emanuel, never let a crisis go to waste. And I think both parties, everybody involved in politics saw this crisis and seized an opportunity. And I think now the American people, I think an overwhelming number of them are just absolutely overwhelmed.
Let me get
and they're not sure what to do. And you start talking about folks in southeastern New Mexico that are already about independence, leave them alone. They're not going to buy into it.
That's right. Good point. But Crystal, there's a matter of fairness, isn't it? I mean, we all have the choice to do or not do anything we want, but this is an issue of fairness. You're in the business of persuasion. How do we persuade people that, masking up is going to be good for them as well as everybody else?
Well, I think it's kind of funny, and I say this very sarcastically and with love to Dan Foley, but it's nice to know that you're a public relations practitioner too with us. And so, and when we talk about, in the subject of fairness, I think the biggest lesson that we've all learned from this is that we're at the mercy of science at this point. No public relations practitioner can take a crisis and plan for something unexpected when the data and the research is still coming out about the science of the virus. And so, of course, it puts us in a position where, as it often happens, that one person that might get COVID ruins it for the rest of the herd, right? And that's what's happening now. And even seeing Republican lawmakers going back on their thoughts about the vaccine itself, saying that the vaccine should be inoculated in everybody's arms and everybody should get the vaccine. We're at the point now where if the CDC put a recommendation a year ago, we didn't trust it. Right. Now we're at the point of the CDC is putting a recommendation out. And as much as we hate it, we know that we have to do what we have to do to get over this, because we're all tired of these changes, these mask mandates, et cetera. But we know that I think now our society is so used to the unpredictability at this point, not to mention that we're one of the only few countries that's actually used to actually life now without COVID, or with less of COVID in the general spaces. Like right. Even watching the Olympics over the last week, not seeing crowds and not seeing people participate, it's so foreign to us now. After being okay to start walking around without a mask since June.
That's a fair point. I appreciate that.
And it's only been 3 weeks. Remember how fast these things are changing. It's only 3 weeks since New Mexico came out of, a virtual lockdown.
Well, Dee, let me stay with you. Cast forward 3 weeks, and we got school coming back in for a lot of folks. Santa Fe goes back August 6th. APS is right around that time, and we just had an announcement from my employer, University of New Mexico here, that their guidance is now back to masks for everyone indoors, vaccinated or not. Let's talk about back to school. What have you seen so far that it gives you comfort that we can actually pull this off? Or are you concerned that we can get back to school given what we know now?
Well, I think that it's been a rather awkward position for the PED, the Public Education Department, to have put out guidance that middle and high school students didn't need to wear masks if they were vaccinated. And then the CDC came out with its recommendations, so that they haven't actually backtracked on that yet, but they will. And APS is the harbinger, because APS just indicated that all students will need to wear masks indoors. So, I think what's happened here is that we've had the honor system, and the honor system has not worked. The people who have not been vaccinated are not wearing masks. So if our rates don't come down, and if something doesn't happen, what's next is maybe some sort of a mandate that people get vaccinated at UNM, which they turned down, or if they are employed by the federal government, which everyone's been kind of expecting that announcement, because the veterans administration, excuse me, has mandated that.
Yep.
New York, California, that may be next.
Meaning, let me kind of flesh that a little bit for folks who may not know what Dee Dee's going to here. Basically, they're required, if you're unvaccinated, you're going to have to test every week or even more often to go to work in some of these places. And Dan, does that feel like a leap too far? I mean, let me put it in this context here, though. Are we missing the forest here, so to speak? The kids are going to be back in class. You know, it's somewhat normal, isn't it not? Can we get through this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, there's no doubt that I think there's a parallel conversation to have here, right? One is, you know, what is COVID doing and the effects? The other one is how we're responding and reacting to it. You know, here we are having this conversation about making kids wear masks in school, and yet even the own CDC's information says, look, these young kids are not a problem. It's not hurting these young kids. It's not, you know, but yet the answer is, well, put them in a mask. And so, you know, I don't know. I've got 4 kids. They're grown now. I can't imagine telling my 3rd grade kid he's got to wear a mask all day while he's sitting in class. You couldn't get him to sit in a chair for 20 minutes.
But that's the K through 12 recommendation. That's just reality right now.
So I think that, you know, I think we hear people say all the time we should follow the science. Then you look at the science and we're making decisions that don't follow the science on certain things. So it makes people say, well, if you're not using the science to follow that decision, then what science are you using to make this decision? Which brings me back to the whole, you know, it's crazy, right? I mean, right now the theory is, right now the word is there's over a third of the United States military that hasn't gotten vaccinated. So, I mean, you're going to start telling everybody in America as a kid, they got to get vaccinated. But, you know, they can say what they want. There's a fight right now in California from both I think it's the prison guards union, and I think there's another public employees union saying, you can't make us get vaccinated. You can't make us get vaccinated. And so these edicts are coming out.
I have a but. Hang on. I have a but, and I'm going to toss it to Crystal. France. Vaccine passports. Germany, vaccine passports. You can't walk in the door. They're not doing the honor system. You're gonna have to show something, or you're not getting in the door. Are we headed that way? I mean, is there a step that could be taken in that direction that's palatable to Americans? How could we possibly pull that off?
I think we go back to, so we talked about the decision making behind a lot of the different institutions, businesses, and back to Dan's point, like, you know, people are swaying and making decisions because the science is not uncertain situations because of science. We always goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Safety and security, safety and security of our people, the safety and security of our staff, especially here at our company, and the safety and security of our families that we go home to at the end of the day. And so safety and security for, you know, in places like Germany and France, where they're putting these mandates, it's the government's way of showing safety and security for all of the individuals that live within that country. Like, you know, we still have.
They are getting protests in Paris.
Of course, there's always going to be feedback because people don't want to do things like that. But if you think about it, right, if there's mandates like curfews over at native reservations, it's because of the safety and security, right, of a nation not being wiped out because of a pandemic. And so, yeah, of course, there's going to be complaining and moaning about mandates of this sort, but. You know, back to Dee Dee's point, that if the mandates if people are working on the honor system or not complying with the honor system or the thoughts of an honor system, then, you know, we have to take matters into the hands of the individuals. And one of the things we also see too, especially in our nation, is that
wrap up real quick.
See how, and I'll make it quick. So we see how things go on a micro level. We see that employers are starting to mandate vaccines within their employees or within their workforces among their employees. And then we start to see it go on a citywide level, on a county level, and then eventually to go nationwide. That's the nature of the course of America, is that we start small, then the mandates go big. And I would anticipate something like this for like a vaccine passport of some sort.
Good points there. We're out of time. This group kicks around another topic, public financing for New Mexico United Soccer Stadium, in just a few minutes.
How do you match people's interests who are coming with the mission of our hospital and of our program? And I think he's thought a lot about that and done an excellent job really figuring out what kinds of criteria to look for to make sure that folks are interested in underserved communities, staying in New Mexico, and going to a rural location.
The troubled legacy of Indian boarding schools in the United States is finally being acknowledged by the federal government. The schools, created by federal policy in the 1800s and often run by churches, were intended to assimilate Native American children and strip them of their tribal culture, traditions, dress, language, all of it. Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland recently launched a federal investigation to locate school facilities, burial grounds, and to identify the tribal affiliations of children who died at these schools. That follows the grim discovery of hundreds of remains in Canada at sites of former Indian residential schools there. Those discoveries are painful reminders for Native Americans who have been impacted by intergenerational trauma of the schools. This week, correspondent Antonia Gonzalez speaks with some members of the Native community about that traumatic history.
I want to thank you for being with us today and just acknowledge that this is a difficult subject for many people to talk about and maybe even our viewers to watch. We're talking about boarding schools in the United States and impacts on Native American people here across the country and in New Mexico. Councilman Garcia, you were there at the National Congress of American Indians mid-year convention when Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland made the announcement on her boarding school initiative. What was your reaction hearing that?
The initial reaction is that it did happen because it started. Her efforts started while she was still Congresswoman, and she was considering setting up a investigation or something to that effect of what finally transpired. And the fact that she moved over to Secretary of Interior, which was one of the best moves in the country for Indian country, she was able to move this effort a little faster than the normal. And so I think the effort has been long overdue, but there's a whole lot of history that most people in this country that don't know about. And that's Indian history. All of the things that we've gone through, the suffering and all of that.
And Angel, what was your response when you heard the news of this investigation? Not only just an investigation, but the U.S. government acknowledging its part in federal Indian boarding schools.
It couldn't have come at a better time. If we're paying attention to what's happening in Canada right now, the discovery after discovery after discovery of burial sites, hundreds of Indigenous children buried at residential schools. And so we're both grateful and hopeful with Secretary Haaland being at the helm of the Department of Interior to push further these efforts.
And Councilman, can you talk a little bit about the impact on Pueblo people here in New Mexico with boarding schools? It's a history that tribal communities are well aware of, even though it's just now being brought to light in the public in the United States. We hear stories from our parents, our grandparents. It's a living history, and the impacts, including trauma and abuse, have been intergenerational.
There's no understanding of what the intent was, other than trying to promote education, but that's not even a venue that the United States had its mind on. It was something different, and I think the United States has not talked about that. And the word is called genocide. And genocide is what it's about. What's happened is that religion and way of life are misunderstood by the dominant society. So the fact that we have culture and tradition, that's not religion, that's way of life. That's our way of life. And to just categorize it into religious thing, which is the conversion thing that you want to do. And for Pueblo country, because of the what we still go through in our traditional ways for taking care of our lost ones, it's very, very hurtful if someone is buried elsewhere, that they are not part of that land base, if you will, not part of Mother Earth at that point. And so trying to understand that is a big, big issue. But the fact that it's kind of coming out now, it's being exposed, I think it's not going to happen in a year's time. It's not going to happen in 5 years' time. going to take a long, long time. The healing part hasn't even been measured at this point because it's so small.
And Angel, Councilman Garcia mentioned healing and working with a lot of people through your coalition, dealing with trauma and impacts of intergenerational trauma is what the coalition you work with does. How is using culture part of healing and can help with healing of impacts from boarding schools?
So what Councilman Garcia mentioned, that the ceremonies that we have, the process of returning our people into the earth is so important. And when we began having these conversations, just as a staff organization, so many feelings of anger and grief and hurt arose just within the 12 of us at the coalition. And as we began to have these conversations with our members and community members, it continued to rise. And so when we pulled, along with Albuquerque Mutual Aid and Fight for Our Lives, these community-based organizations together, a couple of efforts, it began as a conversation of what do we do next? And when we really got deep into the feelings that we were experiencing, it was very important that we had a space and a time for folks to come together to heal. And what that meant was to grieve collectively. We did a lot of focus around the children that we do have and a lot of events to support their well-being. But that healing process is very important. It's also not linear. It's gonna take a lot of time. It's gonna take a lot of turns. I think the more information that comes out from the investigations through the Department of the Interior will continue to surface these feelings for folks. And it's important that we continue to hold space and come together in new ways, especially given COVID and the remoteness of what interaction looks like now, to heal and to connect.
And Councilman Garcia, just to follow up with that, is what do you hope comes out of this first year of the investigation?
Well, I hope that it doesn't come into a political battle. And from my experience in being involved in tribal government and Indian government per se, all across the country, and collaborations and working with the federal government, it sometimes efforts like this tend to stall out, and it becomes a political game rather than the real true spirit of what it is we're trying to accomplish. And the accomplishment, I think, has to do with healing. And unless you understand the parts of healing and how long it takes and what is needed by the people that need that healing, number one, it's got to be accepted that these things happen. But the guilty party also has to accept that these things happen. And the history of it is that it wasn't written in everyday book literature that I've got here. And so how many times have Indian people in their history courses that they've taken because of it's a requirement in the education process? How many times have they read anything like this in the history book? And I say nil, because it's not in the history book. And so when you're at that level of a denial by the federal government that these things happen, then it becomes a harder effort to bring it to the surface and then move it along.
And Angel, any final thoughts?
Yeah, the healing requires connection, that we cannot have reconciliation without truth, that this was a practice of genocide, and that it's time for the country to reckon with that. There are ways in which New Mexico can grapple this issue, It's through the provisions of Yazzie versus Martinez to get that curriculum into the textbooks of children. Now it is ensuring that everyone is able to have a firm understanding of this is the history of this country.
Thank you both for joining us today on New Mexico in Focus, and there's definitely a lot of work ahead on boarding school, looking at boarding school history here in the United States, and definitely for the healing process. Thank you so much. Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland recently announced her U.S. boarding school initiative to investigate boarding school history here in the United States. She recently sat down with PBS NewsHour to share some thoughts.
Secretary Haaland, thank you so much for joining us. I have to say at the outset that this is one of the saddest, most disturbing stories I've ever seen. To think of these thousands and thousands of children taken from their families, so many of whom never came back. The families never knew what happened to them. It's unspeakable. And your own family was touched by this.
Yes, it is a tragic era in our history, in American history, the boarding school era. I think about it as sort of one of the last-ditch efforts to get Native Americans out of their communities and put them into mainstream society. After, genocide, after the killing off of, vast numbers of Native folks so that folks could take their land. And it was tragic after everything else that had happened as well. And they took Indians from their communities and their families so they could indoctrinate them, right? To take away their clothing, to brutally, take away their languages and their cultures. And many children, yes, they never made it back home. I am grateful that my grandparents made it back home. I wouldn't be here today if they hadn't, of course. And so this is a history that all of us need to know about so that we can begin a healing process for the families who are still living with the generational trauma of the boarding school era, of the assimilation era, of the of all of the terrible eras of federal Indian policy that tribes have had to live with.
Do you have a good understanding, do you think, of what happened to the children who died?
Well, I mean, we don't know, right? And that is one of the things that we hope to find out with our federal boarding school initiative. It was widely known that in Indian boarding schools that malnutrition was an issue. If you talk to folks whose grandparents went to boarding school and they've heard stories, there's stories about kids jumping off of trains because they didn't want to go to the boarding school, running away and never being seen again. This was, there were many ways, yes, that children died in those settings. And that's one of the things that we're hoping we can find out.
And it was, as you said, a widely accepted policy in this country, in the United States, and in Canada. I read your quote from the Civil War veteran who founded the school for children in Pennsylvania, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, who said, and I'm quoting, "Kill the Indian in him and save the man." It is astonishing to think that that was the mindset behind this.
Yes, indeed. Native Americans weren't thought of as humans. We weren't considered citizens of this country until 1924. We didn't have the right to vote in many, many communities, some as late as 1960 or 62. We weren't thought of as valuable, contributors to this country. And yet today we see that, Native Americans have the highest rate of of military service. The ratio is higher than any other groups of people. We step up to defend our country. And of course, today, we defied all the odds. Many of our families, our ancestors persevered. My grandparents actually were part of the assimilation era. After boarding school, they went and worked on the railroad in Winslow, Arizona.
Can we be confident that we're going to get to the bottom of it when it's the government, in effect, investigating itself?
Well, I absolutely feel that with our initiative that we can work on healing. I really feel confident that, that's a goal for us, and we want to make sure that the families get the answers that they need and they want. The federal government has a trust obligation to Indian tribes. That is in exchange for all the land that essentially became the United States. This was all Indian land at one time. And so I feel confident that this is part of our trust obligation to Indian tribes, this initiative that we are moving forward with. I feel very confident that this is a new era, and we want to make sure that tribes have a seat at the table.
And ultimately, how do you see holding the institutions accountable that were responsible for this?
That remains to be seen. Of course, there's a lot of recently, I was able to participate in a ceremony at Carlisle. It's now an Army War College. It was the Carlisle Industrial School for Native Americans. My great-grandfather attended that school, and I was invited by the Rosebud Sioux tribe as they work to remove children from their tribe who were buried in a cemetery there to take them home to their homeland in South Dakota. And I think that it's up to every tribe, right? How do they want to move forward? What is their idea of healing, and what would make them feel like they've gotten the answers they want? And we're going to do our best to make sure that we are attentive to those needs.
Secretary Haaland, you also wrote recently about the challenge of loving your own country, a country that was responsible for committing these acts. How do you explain that to others, to other Native Americans who look at this and question, how can you love a country that has done this?
Well, first of all, my ancestral homelands are here, and I can't go anywhere else. This is my home, and this is where my family is. This is where my history is. We've been here for tens of thousands of years, and we want to make sure that we are defending this land for future generations.
Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Somos Unidos, we are all united. In Albuquerque, that might be especially true if voters in November approve a proposed bond for a soccer stadium. That, while being built as a multi-use stadium, will most notably be home for the city's successful professional soccer team, New Mexico United. Now, Mayor Tim Keller and team owner Peter Trevisani made the announcement at last weekend's game against El Paso. And Crystal, I think you were there, and you're a huge supporter of the team. I got to ask you this right off the top. We got to have a conversation about this. How do you feel?
She remembers even being at the game.
I actually was not at that game.
Oh, you weren't at that game. Okay.
I was not at the game. No,
Gotcha.
not that time.
All right. Let me ask you this, Crystal. Public financing, is this the appropriate way to go about this?
Yeah, yes, I do think that public financing is the appropriate way to do this. People
Why?
forget that some of our major event centers like Tingley Coliseum is owned by the state of New Mexico. Rio Rancho Event Center, that on a good year, according to the mayor, even goes negative $1 million in terms of loss. Most of the major event centers that are here in town, in the key phrase that, yes, the legislative teams and politicians use, but really it is the best definition. It's a public and private partnership. And that's the really critical piece that people forget. Is Albuquerque ready for another multi-use stadium? Absolutely. Our organization at Ciarza always constantly does events before the pandemic, of course. And I can't tell you how many times there is an event going on almost every damn weekend here in New Mexico that it can be statewide, it can be local. And New Mexico United, not Albuquerque, New Mexico United purposely brings the entire state together to help build around the community of soccer. It was Ron Patel, it was Lawrence Espinosa.
All right, let me ask you. I got to buzz through. I don't want to be rude. I got to buzz through some folks here on this idea of public financing. I hear your points there, the PR points. Dee Dee, public financing, is it appropriate? I mean, let's put it this way. We have an ownership group that is not willing to risk any of their own capital on a stadium, but yet again, they're going to be able to clean up on some of the largesse of that partnership. Is this the appropriate way to go?
Well, I think in this case it is. I would have a different answer if we're talking about the Denver Broncos and subsidizing the Denver Broncos with a huge stadium and the Broncos threatening to leave the city if they didn't get this kind of public financing. But having said that, the city has to be cautious. There have been many proposals for downtown stadiums dating back to the Festival Marketplace and many others. The public monies, and we're talking here about $75 million to construct the stadium, and then the team would rent the stadium from the city, which would float bonds in order to finance it. There are a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about that. What if the team doesn't do so well one year? Will they be paying their rent? Where does ticket sales play into that? Are there a certain amount of those that are guaranteed? In this case, I think that it's a good bet. And we really need it at this time in our city and state's history.
Why?
Because there are very few things that bring us together in the way that this young, new team and sport has done.
He's a hooligan.
How big is the us? This is what I want to know. I hear this whole thing about statewide and we and us. Is it really that big? I mean, Dan, let me ask you this, or is this more of an illusion because the team's new, it's exciting? How big, honestly, is this for a $70 million stadium, which I might remind you, but hold on, I'll remind everybody, we're talking about no less than 20 home games a year. Less than 20, okay? So $70 million. Let's think about this. All right, Daniel, back to my question. Go ahead.
So the first thing, let me say this, Gene. I'll applaud what they're doing from the standpoint of they're putting it to the voters. This is not being done in some backroom deal, and all of a sudden we're finding out about it. The voters are going to decide. So that's the greatest form of democracy, that we've got. If the voters of this city think it's so. How do I think it affects New Mexico? So, Gene, I think you're looking at it from one lens, which is not wrong, even though you're wrong most of the time. This one, you're not. It's from the standpoint of that people traveling from out of the city, right, coming to buy tickets, supporting New Mexico United. But I think that it is a state team because they are on a stage. They are walking around with the name New Mexico United, not Albuquerque United. So I do think it gives some opportunity for there to be a state buy-in. I think that, the other thing that I do think is good about soccer is, look, these guys can start winning and go on a streak, and they can keep moving up in the classes. And, you could wind up someday with an MSL soccer team here for not a lot of money. So,
and that's part of the play to build the stadium is sort of that just in case it happens. Crystal, let me ask Crystal this, Daniel.
Gene, I was going to say is the stadium can be used by more than just, as they're saying, but you don't forget discount. And I'm a football fan. You know that, Gene. Yep. Don't discount the fact that we've had a pretty good soccer program in the past at the University of New Mexico that played on the back of a track deal. So if we bring back soccer at the University of New Mexico, who was nationally ranked, by the way, and give them a facility like this, now you're hosting NCAA tournaments. So I see an opportunity for it, but I just wanted to point that out, Gene.
Crystal, let me ask you this, Crystal. We've got two locations. You've got the plan there. I saw it on your lap a second ago. We've got Second and Iron, Cole and Broadway's got everyone lit up, and you can picture your mind's eye, Cole and Broadway. Let me ask you this. What happens, this has to go before council, and what happens if council decides to take a free market approach to this and say, okay, guys, United, here's what we're going to do here. You don't want to assume any risk here. You don't get to pick where it's going to be, the stadium, but you also don't get to open what we know you're going to do here as a snazzy, giant, new United bar, like this giant thing that's going to be on the site that's guaranteed to happen because Mr. Travasini says he wants to be in the development side of this thing as well. What happens if council says, you know what, guys? If you say this is going to revitalize downtown, why don't you put your big new bar downtown and we'll let that be the end of the rainbow down there because you're not putting any money into this thing. Is that a reasonable proposition?
Yeah, I would imagine if city council said no or had any type of hesitation, you bet that the Curse, the Set Piece Ultras, the Black Diamonds, all of the types of supporters groups that are out there that have no ounce of experience whatsoever in politics are going to be showing up in the council chambers without a doubt, because it's, remember that the what makes a team, like what makes a franchise is the fans. And the fact that it was a great idea for them to put Mayor Keller and Peter on the back of a truck, not in a press conference. They put them in the heart of the fans to cheer on for this project.
Why is that a great idea?
Yeah, it was a great idea because of the
why, Crystal?
Because of the PR opportunities, obviously, because all of a sudden, especially when you think about whenever us campaign managers or whatever it is, they need to show that there's a supporter base and they need to show that there's a fan or a group of stakeholders that are in favor of a certain project of some sort. Basics of politics, right? They already have one built in, and there's a lot of them in that supporter section that sits on, section 201 and 202 every single game, at least 200 to 500 people easily. And that's why this stadium is so unique, is because it actually builds a bigger capacity for stadiums because for the supporter section in the stadium. And the supporter section, I know I'm sounding like such a fangirl right now.
I hear nothing in your take.
The supporter sections are really going to be the people that drive the revenue.
Crystal, I hear nothing in your rap that supports the neighborhood and their needs. It's all about the fans. All right, hang on. The administration says the August 2nd meeting will have a comprehensive look at the city's proposal for taxpayer funding. So we're going to check it out when that happens. Thanks to all our panelists for their work this week. Be sure to head to our Facebook page for more discussion from the group, including initial reactions to the surprise news this week that investigators from the Attorney General's office raided the home and business of longtime state lawmaker and House Minority Floor Leader Cheryl Williams Stapleton.
I'm Matt Grubbs. For years, New Mexico has had the nation's highest proportion of physicians aged 60 or older. The state's rural nature and wide open spaces, something we have all grown to love and appreciate. It's been a tough sell for new doctors. And when residencies ended this spring for the University of New Mexico, 15 family medicine physicians were residents. 13 of them chose to stay. That doesn't mean the gap is closed. That doesn't mean the problem is solved, but this is a big step. Drs. Molly McLean and Arthur Kaufman are with the Health Sciences Center and the medical school. And joining us by Zoom is Dr. Darshan Patel, who will be practicing at the end of August in Lovington. And thank you all for being here. Why don't we just start with a very general question. Is there sort of a secret sauce to get a result like this with a class of physicians to get so many people? We should point out that not all of them are from New Mexico, to stay in state, something we really need.
I think there is a secret sauce, and I think many people have been working on this for many years. Historically, looking back to 2011, about 65 to 70% of our graduates do tend to stay, and about 25% of them historically have gone rural. What makes this year so special is 87% stayed, and about 62% ended up going rural. I think over the past 7 years, our previous program director, Dr. Dan Waldman, did a lot of work thinking about how do you match people's interests who are coming with the mission of our hospital and of our program. And I think he's thought a lot about that and done an excellent job really figuring out what kinds of criteria to look for to make sure that folks are interested in underserved communities, staying in New Mexico, and going to a rural location. I think the rural piece this year was particularly powerful and has been very variable over the past years. And so Dr. Waldman and Dr. Kaufman was involved too, really instead of focusing on an urban residency, creating a rural residency. And so they have created a rural residency at the IHS at Shiprock. The first IHS residency ever. They are recruiting their first class this year. And so there's a lot more going on than just at UNMH in terms of making sure that people stay in New Mexico and people go to rural New Mexico as well.
And IHS being Indian Health Service.
Correct, yeah.
That's pretty remarkable. Dr. Patel, when you were looking at places where you would like to be a resident, what drew you to this program? Did some of that stuff that Dr. McLean was talking about play into your choice?
Certainly. I actually grew up here in Albuquerque, and it was really important to me to train where I call home and serve the community that helped me when I was being raised. And so, it was a privilege to be able to be part of the UNM Family Medicine residency program. And I think the colleagues and the mentors that, I was able to work with really helped shape my decision to serve the rural communities of New Mexico.
That's something that strikes me as potentially being a change in the way residents are thinking about how they want to serve. I know that working in a big hospital in a big city with lots of amenities might be attractive, but it sounds like residents are thinking a little bit differently about at least how they want to start their medical careers.
Right, and in family medicine, we're trained to be generalists, and we recognize that our skills are needed and also sometimes best served in rural areas where access to resources might be limited, even more limited than in Albuquerque, and so through the robust training process provided by our residency program, I think my colleagues and I realized that we would be able to kind of step into filling needs outside of Albuquerque.
Dr. Arthur Kaufman, you've had a long history with this program. Doctors and their partners, as they look at places that they want to live and begin their career, I know that they can feel isolated, not just geographically, but socially. How do you sort of address some of those needs that everyone has, but that might be particularly difficult for doctors?
I think you have to create an environment in smaller communities which not just replicates what we have in an urban area, but actually goes beyond it in many ways. Smaller communities are very supportive of each other, and sometimes in larger communities people feel anonymous and lonely. But in smaller communities, everyone knows each other, and it's very attractive, especially to people who've never seen that before. So that we've created, for example, where Dr. Patel is going, created Lovington and Hobbs almost as a learning destination. Students, residents, others are all going there so that they're not isolated, they're part of a larger community. And the University of New Mexico is investing in decentralizing our resources. Not just family medicine, but also nursing, pharmacy, physical therapy, so that there's a whole community that supports each one of those practitioners.
In the past, would a residency with family and community medicine, would that have taken place primarily at UNMH at the hospital here in Albuquerque?
Almost all training traditionally is in large academic health centers and large cities, because the incentives were there. But now, especially with the leadership in our state, we're developing models with partner community hospitals, partner community health centers, and the state government to shift that, where resources are going to communities to hire and train residents. And that makes all the difference in the world. I used to work in the Indian Health Service. It changed my life. I saw the world in a different way. We have to give our residents community experiences which will change their attitudes, and where those communities become far more attractive than what they can do in a large urban center.
And Dr. McLean, are residents or prospective residents, are they responding to this type of a program?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I think UNM has been just a leader in creating family medicine doctors for quite some time. We have a very strong program, and because we have such excellent residents that come, they are also very good at helping the medical students see how powerful family medicine is. And I think it's amazing to work with. You don't have to do a lot of work. We attract these residents, and then the residents kind of do that wonderful work for themselves. And I think that they have just done an amazing job they come in passionate to work for underserved communities, and they dedicate their energy and time and their futures to doing that. And I think that we just did a good, we don't create that in the residency program. We just facilitate the education that they kind of want. And so I think it seems like the future of medicine really is, I think, mirrored in our residents. And I think the medical students that we work with, their drive really is to serve underserved, go rural, do all the things that family medicine doctors can do that other specialties really can't do. It's just really exciting to be a part of it and to be able to facilitate that.
Sure. Dr. Patel, you're one of the few people in the program who actually is from New Mexico and chose to stay here. It sounds like most of the folks, at least in this class, who chose to stay here weren't from here. Have you discussed those choices to stay in New Mexico and work in rural hospitals with any of your classmates or folks in that residency class?
Yes, I mean, I think we have robust opportunities to train in rural sites throughout our residency program, and I think that allows people who aren't, familiar with the rural communities of New Mexico to actually have strong training opportunities while they're completing the residency program. And so, I think that was a really important part of having people decide to go rural. But it's true, we're competing nationally for residents to come to New Mexico. We know that people who train in New Mexico will stay, statistically have a higher likelihood of staying. And so I think, we need to recognize as a state, University of New Mexico needs to attract residents so that we can convince them to stay after they're done with their training.
Having a chance to work in a rural hospital or a rural medical setting prior to actually taking a job in a place like Lovington, how did that play into your education and your excitement, basically, for heading out into sort of the wilds of New Mexico, at least as folks from maybe Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Las Cruces see it?
Well, I think even though we're primarily serving patients in Albuquerque, many of our patients have footprints in rural areas. You can be rural very quickly, even if you live in the Albuquerque Santa Fe area. So my continuity clinic site, for example, was in the Albuquerque Indian Health Center, which is an IHS facility, and many of my patients were traveling, many, many miles, hours to come to see their provider here in Albuquerque. And so, I think even if you were practicing in Albuquerque, you recognize that our state is very rural. And I think being a family medicine physician, we recognize that even though we serve patients in Albuquerque, the needs are even greater outside of the state or outside of the city.
Sure. Drs. Kaufman and McLean, as you look at the future of this program, do you feel like the future is sort of a more decentralized model?
Yes. I think the model that Dr. Patel and Dr. McLean are developing really demonstrates a huge change in our thinking about training, because it has to be driven by community need, not necessarily big city hospital need. And one of the data fragments that's important is that if you can locate a graduate physician in a rural community, that physician generates about $1 million in business for that community. It sustains the rural hospital, it brings jobs to that community, it raises the tax base. There's a huge economic impact, and that's why there's so much interest in this kind of program. That graduate education is not just for a few doctors, it's the impact on community health that's so important.
Do you get that when you look at places to put your residents, in rural communities? Do you hear from not just the hospitals and the clinics, but from the mayors, the councils, things like that?
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the biggest draws. We have a required rural rotation for all of our residents, and we have relationships, really strong, important relationships with the Indian Health Services at Zuni and at Shiprock. We have some sites at Gallup, and there are a number of residency programs at rural sites at Silver City. Santa Fe is still considered rural, although I think that's kind of funny, and we work closely with them as well. And I think what happens is that the residents go to those those sites and really see what it feels like to be a rural physician and see what an important but also partnered role they play with the community, that it's not just a doctor being in a clinic seeing patients and having kind of isolated from that relational piece. I think they go into the community, and I had that same experience at Shiprock. You go into a community and it, just like what Dr. Kaufman was saying, it feels completely different and it feels more powerful in terms of the relational piece, which is so important for family medicine. Primary care is about relationship, and it really is about building connection with people. And I think if you have the capacity to do that in a community setting, it feels like so many of us feel that's what family medicine is all about. And so those rural rotations are just so important for that experience that we may never have had before. And I think that may have a large part in why we had residents like clamoring to get to Zuni when they graduated, clamoring to get to Shiprock. We have 2 folks going to Gallup, 2 folks going to Santa Rosa. They had that experience in the rural setting that they don't get in a city, in a more urban setting. And I think that had a lot to do with why they stayed.
Well, it's an encouraging result, and we thank you all for the time that you spent thinking about it and the time you spent talking with us about it. Thanks for your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Doctor.
I have a question. Are you honestly all that shocked we're back to where we are on mask usage? Not in that I told you so kind of way, just more of a confirmation that no, we are past nothing and never were. Now, I'm interested also in watching the political calculus at this point, because when you think about it, no governor has truly won or lost the COVID fight. It's just a new phase, which means each governor is going to be managing this COVID fight and the corresponding criticism for those decisions they're going to have to make right up to election season and possibly right up to election day. But for now, it's back to the fight. You didn't think this was going to be a one-round knockdown, did you? No way. Thanks again for joining us, for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation and viewers like you.